Hey, welcome to our explainer. Today, we're digging into one of the most powerful forces shaping our world, but when you almost never see the demographic transition. Seriously, this is the hidden engine behind why some countries' populations are booming and others are shrinking. It's going to change everything, so let's get right into it.
All right, to kick things off, just look at this chart. It's a snapshot of where we could be headed by the year 2100. Over on the left, you see Europe projected to shrink down to about 630 million people. But then, look at Africa on the right, set to explode to 4.3 times billion. That's not just a small gap. That is a world-altering, seismic shift that is going to completely rewrite the human story.
So you have to ask, what on earth is causing this incredible split? Well, the answer is a fascinating theory that helps us understand how populations evolve over time. It's called the demographic transition, and believe me, it is the key to unlocking our past, our present, and our wildly different futures.
Okay, so to wrap our heads around this, we've got to start with the classic, the textbook version of the theory, the simple model that started this whole conversation.
So what is this thing? Well, at its most basic level, the demographic transition is simply the shift from a world with super high birth rates and equally high death rates to a new world where both are low. It's a journey from one kind of population balance to a totally different one.
And that journey usually gets broken down into 4 stages. So, picture this. Stage 1. For most of human history, you have high birth rates but also high death rates. They basically cancel each other out, so the population stays pretty stable. Then, stage 2 hits, and things get wild. Death rates suddenly plummet thanks to better medicine, food, sanitation, but birth rates stay high. That massive gap? Boom, population explosion. That's exactly what happened in Europe back in the 18th century. Then comes stage 3, where society starts to catch up. People begin having fewer kids, birth rates finally start to fall, and that crazy growth slows down. And that leads us to stage 4, a new kind of balance with low birth rates, low death rates, and a population that's stable or maybe even starting to shrink.
But, of course, here's the twist. While that 4-stage model is a neat little package, the real world, well, it's a lot messier. It turns out there isn't just one single path through this transition. Yeah, history definitely didn't follow the script. Take France, for example. They started having fewer kids way back in the 1700s, a whole century before most of their neighbors even thought about it. And then you look at countries in Asia and Latin America in the 20th century. When they went through their transitions, they did it at lightning speed. I mean, way, way faster than the slow, centuries-long crawl that Europe went through.
And this brings us to a really crucial question. We know birth rates fall, but why? Is it always because a country gets richer and more modern? The evidence says, nope, not at all.
To really get to the why, a demographer named Ansley Cole came up with this really smart framework called RWA. It says that for birth rates to drop, 3 things have to happen. First, readiness. People have to actually see controlling family size as a real conscious choice. Second, willingness. They have to believe that having fewer kids is actually a good thing, socially or economically. And third, ability. They need to have access to effective ways to actually do it. You gotta have all 3. Without them, nothing changes. And this framework helps us see 2 totally different reasons why families might choose to have fewer kids. The classic story is modernization, right? Life gets better, kids are more likely to survive, education costs more, so people choose to invest more resources in fewer children. But there's another, much darker path, what some call a Malthusianism of poverty. This happens in places stuck in a long-term economic crisis, where families limit children not because life is getting better, but out of sheer desperation, because they literally can't afford to raise them. So with all that history and theory in our back pocket, where does our world actually stand today? Well, the source material breaks down the globe into 6 distinct groups, based on where they are in this transition. Let's take a look.
This chart gives us an amazing overview from back in 2019. Now, if you add up the countries that have already finished their transition, or just about to, that's the big purple, blue, and green slices, they make up 78% of the world's population. Just let that sink in for a second. For nearly 4 out of every 5 people on Earth, the era of explosive population growth is already over. It's in the rearview mirror.
And this table right here, this is where that huge split we talked about at the beginning really comes into sharp focus. Check out groups 2 and 3. That's where you find giants like China and India. Their populations are actually projected to shrink by 2100. Now scroll down to groups 5 and 6, which are mostly in sub-Saharan Africa.
Group 5 is on track to triple its population, and Group 6 it's projected to grow by nearly 5 times. This, right here, is the great demographic divide of the 21st century.
So what's the big deal? Why does this matter? Well, these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They represent a fundamental reshuffling of the global deck, and the geopolitical consequences are going to be absolutely massive.
Let me put it this way. In 2019, the group of countries that were pretty much done with their transition made up 78% of the world's population. By 2100, their share is forecast to plummet to just 48%. Meanwhile, the countries that are still in the middle of their transition, their share of the world population is set to double, from 16% to 32%. We are talking about a historic redistribution of people, power, and demographic weight across the entire planet.
And in the end, it really all comes back to this core idea, which UNESCO summed up perfectly. The demographic transition is not some rigid, one-size-fits-all law of nature. It's a flexible process that looks different everywhere you go, shaped by a society's unique culture, its economy, and its own history. There is no single story. There are many, many stories. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. As we head into this future, this demographically lopsided world, with some parts shrinking and other parts booming, what is that world actually going to look like? What will it feel like? That's something for all of us to really think about.